A warm lead sales process only works on warm leads. It does not work on cold leads. And so when you really break that down, what that means is if you're somebody who just gets a call that comes in, you don't answer it, you call them back in a couple hours, you talk to them for 10 minutes and you price drop, and some people buy, you close the laydown sale. But it wasn't even really sales. It was just you did the thing that you were supposed to do and you made the sale, But at the end of the day, that will not work on people who they don't know you yet, they don't like you yet, and they don't trust you yet. They just don't know anything about you, so they couldn't possibly feel any type of way about you. And so we need to get them to know, like, and trust us. And that only comes through building a real relationship with them.
Welcome to the Top Dog Mindset Podcast, where we unlock the secrets of running a successful dog training business. I'm your host, Kevin, joined by my co-host, Angel. Together, we bring you expert insights, inspiring stories, and practical tips. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, we're here to provide you with the necessary information to build a thriving dog training company. So relax, join us with a cup of coffee as we explore the Top Dog Mindset Podcast.
All right, welcome in everybody to another episode of the Top Dog Mindset Podcast. Kevin and Angel here, and today we got a really interesting topic that we've been kind of talking about with a lot of clients recently. Angel, you more specifically have been talking about this with clients, and I know you have a coaching call lined up with one of our long-term clients about this, and that is the idea of having a real sales process and the difference between having a sales process that might work sometimes and something that is incredibly predictable that you just know does a really, really good job of turning traffic into actual paying customers. So with that being said, why don't you kind of kick us off, talk a little bit about that and tell us what's on your mind?
Yeah. So my idea behind this was, and I know that we've talked about sales a lot on this podcast in different ways. It's kind of one of those recurring things that comes up for us. But my thoughts on it for today is kind of talking about not just improving a sales process, but more so what not having a sales process can look like in comparison to actually having one, whether it's a good one or whether it's one that needs improvements or anything like that. But I say this because oftentimes what I've been noticing a lot more recently too is people will have struggles in certain parts of their business, right? And then us as coaches will kind of troubleshoot what's going on, because it's not always we ask our client, hey, what's going on? And then they tell us exactly what that issue is. It's usually what they think the issue is or what they feel the issue is. And so we'll kind of troubleshoot and go through all of their processes in their business and go through everything that they're dealing with their clients, their leads, objections, and all of that to try to get down to the bottom line of what the real issue is. And so what I've noticed that being specifically with people who are struggling with sales is, the first thing that people think of is it is the lead's fault, because it's usually people who aren't serious or they don't have the money or whatever it is. They were interested in training at one point, but it's just not someone who is serious enough to buy. And so as we dive a little bit deeper into that and start talking about okay, well, what does your sales process look like? So we can go from the very beginning, when this person reached out to you because they needed training, what was then the process that you took to try to get them to that point of booking them for a program or even a consultation? Consultation's got to come first. And what I have found is starting from the very beginning, that initial phone call, because closing someone has to be a two-step process. For us, we encourage everyone to schedule all of their leads for a consultation. That has to be the first thing that you focus on. Assuming someone is calling you for a service that you actually can help them with, you should be scheduling them for a consultation. And then that second part, when you go in for the consultation, is when you're trying to sell them on a program. But in that initial conversation, when someone calls, if your main focus is not to sell them on a consultation or even, address them as you running a business and having certain systems and processes and really be able to even break down what a phone call looks like when someone calls, and there really is no process there. So it's not like we have a broken sales process that we need to improve this part on, or hey, when someone asks you this question, respond with this instead. Or maybe let's try to ask some of these questions before we get to this portion of the conversation. Like before we even reach any of that, we have to make sure that you do even have a sales process. And what I find a lot of the time is people don't have a sales process, and that can look a lot of different ways. Sometimes it really is just like winging it every time a call comes in. And then in other cases, it's just, it might be someone who is really, really good at talking to people, really good at building rapport and stuff like that, but they still are kind of winging it just because they're like, the person calls, they start asking the trainer questions. They answer those questions. They're super kind. They're super good at talking with people, but literally all they're doing on the phone is answering questions. And then they kind of just like let that person who called them guide the conversation. And there's really no like strict process on kind of like how to handle it to then be able to sell your consultation. So, like I said, I think it's more so about talking about the difference between what it's like to have a sales process versus not at all.
Yeah. And I think a really good analogy for this is most dog trainers, if not everybody, would never go into a lesson or pick up a dog and bring them in for a board and train program and not have some sort of an outline or like an operating framework for what is going to be accomplished in that hour, that week, that entire board and train. Like you wouldn't just wing that.
Yeah.
Angel, why don't you give your perspective on that? I mean, like when you brought dogs in for board and trains, I'm assuming you had like a real methodology.
Yeah, I did. And yeah, I had a process for all board and trains regardless of the issues that they were coming in for. Like there's certain things that I know I wanted to start off with in that first week, very basic foundational things, make sure that they, have an understanding of, certain things in terms of like luring and just playing with me, engaging with me, and like little things like that that technically isn't training, but like important beginning parts of getting into training. And I kind of handled that the same way with lessons too, is like only instead of me working just with a dog, I'm now teaching those like basic fundamentals to the dog and to the owner. And there's been situations too where I've gone into a consultation, I've sold them, and then just based on, how that went or how much they paid or mostly my schedule, I was able to just stay there for longer. And then we knocked out our first lesson. And yeah, we just kind of start out with those basics. But so I had like a general outline on how I like to do all of those things. Obviously, things can happen and change them a little bit, but you always have to at least have some sort of like guideline to follow.
Yeah, what's interesting? I was listening to somebody. I apologize to anybody who's listening to this right now who does not give a shit about sports. We have somebody on this call who doesn't give a shit about sports. So, Angel, I apologize ahead of time. But what I was listening to somebody talk about is like if you watch an NFL game, there are some teams, i.e., my beloved New York Giants, where you'll watch them come out on the first drive and the first 15 plays look really good. And then all of a sudden it completely falls apart. And you're watching the team in the second, third, fourth quarter, and you're going like, wait a second, where's the team that I saw that started the game with a touchdown drive, right? And it's because so many of these teams are doing this where they're scripting the first 15 to 20 plays of the game. And then after that, it's like really starts to come into like, hey, the offensive coordinator or the coach really needs to go into their bag and like find like, hey, what are we gonna do the rest of this game? And so I think that's a perfect like example of like what happens when something is scripted and when something is laid out and prepared for and when it's not. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so it's like as soon as you have to go in there and wing it, it's like, trust me, you're not going to nail it. You're just not,
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
don't, nobody does. And at the end of the day, you listen to all these people, all these like great athletes, and they always talk about being prepared. You listen to somebody like Kobe Bryant and how he would watch game tape and film to prepare for games, and he knew every single little thing about the guy that he was going to be guarding and the offense that they were going to be, defending. And down
Mhm.
to like, hey, when the shooter, the guy I'm guarding, catches the ball with his 1 foot back, that means he's going to drive to the basket. Or when his feet are like this, he's going to pass the ball. When he catches the ball like this, he's looking to shoot the ball right away. And like understanding little nuances like that down to just like a minute level. And so I think
Mhm.
really to what you're saying is just winging it is, it's you're just hoping that it works out instead of being very intentional and having something that statistically works out more times than not. And we have people that we work with that they are so dialed in with their sales process that they know 90% of the time when they go into a consultation that they're either locking them in for their drop off or they're even going to be just leaving the house with the dog in hand and just taking the dog home with them. And
Yeah.
so, we talk a lot about doing in-home consultations, and I kind of have realized this recently. Sometimes people have hangups on doing consultations and more specifically free consultations. And I think what a lot of this boils down to is a lack of confidence. Because when I talk to people about this and they say to me like, "Well, why would I do that? Like what if I go out there and I waste my time and they don't buy?" It's like,
Mm.
so two things. First and foremost, have a good discovery process where you feel confident you're booking sales appointments with people that feel like they will actually buy. So you should have some sort of qualifiers in your discovery process. That's the first thing. But the second thing is if you do not feel confident that you're going to walk into somebody's house and leave with the sale, you need to work on your sales process massively. That's a
Yeah.
sales process issue. And that just means that you do not have something yet that works really well. And so that is something that needs to be dialed in and figured out because trust me, once you figure that out, and once you feel confident that I can go into someone's house and 70% of the time, 80, 90% of the time, I'm going to walk away with a high ticket sale, you're going to pretty much want to do nothing else with your time other than go do consultations because there's a 70% chance if I walk into somebody's house and I can get a foot in the door, I'm going to be walking out with 2 to 5 grand. And,
Hmm.
one last thing on that. What I always think about is like if there was a slot machine that I could go play every single day, put money into, and there was a 70 to 90% chance that I was going to pull the lever and win 4 grand, you would need to pry me away with a crowbar. It's like, why would I ever stop? Because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, it's like you have an unlimited money machine once you crack that code. So with that being said, what are your thoughts on that, Angel?
Well, I want to touch on like people charging for their consultations. Like it makes sense. The lack of confidence in your consultations will make someone want to charge for them because you are kind of expecting to walk away from this consult without a sale, but at least you got $50, $200, however much you're charging for them. But
Yeah.
it's like you're starting to only rely on that money, and that is obviously like a very dangerous mindset because like if you just stick with that, you're starting to just get into the business of charging to just go to people's houses to talk about training. Like I feel like it's pulling you further and further away from really focusing on what the main issue is and like where changes need to be made. And
Hmm.
I think what's good for people to understand too is like by wanting to charge for consultations, I would say in most cases, by wanting to charge for consultations, if you just like listen to yourself saying that out loud, like wanting to charge for it because you don't want to waste your time going to people's houses and stuff like that, like if you truly look into it, you should know that you have a sales issue because now what you're trying to do is like when you're trying to sell someone on a consultation, again, whether you're charging $25, $50, $250, that number in comparison to what a sale or what a training program is, somewhere between $2,000 to $4,000, it seems like it should be a much easier thing to sell because it's such a lower amount. And so when people then have a hard time selling that because on the potential client's end, I think of course people aren't going to want to really pay that unless they are being shown the value in it. Like if someone is selling the value on a paid consultation really, really well, like, hey, I'm coming out for a consultation, but in addition to that, I'm also we'll also do like a lesson. So that way you're able to walk away with something, even if you don't sign up, kind of thing. But then, yeah, if people start getting into this other mindset of, oh, if they don't want to pay for a consultation, then they're not serious. When it's like, again, even if you're charging for the consultation, now you have even more of a reason to really have to sell that. It's much easier to sell something that's free versus selling something that they are going to have to pay for to then obviously get more information on what they're going to have to pay for a training program. But
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I think that there can be reasons and different seasons in your business when you can do things like that. Like if you're a solo person shop and you have way more work than you know what to do with, and you're trying to get the most out of your time, and you also want to, you're having people come to you, and you're trying to hold people accountable, and you want to put a card on file. But I think what you're really speaking to is the fact that like people are like just trying to make a buck, and they're like, I should like get paid $50 or something like that. And it's, yeah, I think the ironic thing is it honestly takes as much effort and as much trust building to sell something for $250 as it does to sell something for $2,500. You know, I was just
Mhm.
talking to one of our clients about this who's rolling out a new offer, and I was like, dude, you should just like charge $1,000 for this instead of 100, because you're a one person band right now, and at the end of the day, it's going to require the same amount of effort to get people in for $1,000 as it does for 100. And the other thing is just like the irony of the whole thing. It's like, I'm sure a lot of you guys can have experienced this, where the people who pay you less money tend to be the most difficult types of clients. You know, they're like, it's my last $100 and I don't know what I'm going to do if this doesn't work. And it's like, you want the guy who's like, yeah, no worries. Here's a grand. And, you know, let me know when you're ready to get started. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I just think that you have to get your system down, you know, and the problem with not having a system that's backed by data, you know, for example, knowing when I do this, I close this percentage of my leads, and this is the average dollar amount that people buy for. And when I do this, I close this percentage, and this is the average dollar amount that they buy for. When you just wing it, your emotions will, you'll default to your emotions. You'll start doing the things that feel the easiest to you. You'll start defaulting to the things that feel like they're working. But, you know, we were all talking about this as a team recently, where I feel like you have to be very careful with that, because you know, I think we all like to think we have good intuition, but just being totally candid and vulnerable, like I feel like I've realized over the past year many times that my intuition has actually led me very wrong. And this is why tracking your numbers in your business and knowing what is actually moving the needle for us, like what is actually generating sales, what is actually working when we do this versus that, is so important, because otherwise
Mhm.
you're just kind of crossing your fingers and hoping that it works out, and it's just not a real strategy.
Yeah. And that makes me think of something because you said, like, if you're just kind of winging it, then any time that you have a conversation with someone, you're pretty much just going off of whatever your emotions are at that time. And what that makes me think of is like, and I think this goes the same way for you too, because I can hear it in your voice. Like when we are talking about sales, or even hearing you talk to some of our clients about sales, is when you have a really good process. And, you know, I had the same thing that I did whenever I went in for consultations. Like I had it very structured out, you know, I had like I think 4 main parts of the consultation, and those are things that we talk to our clients about today. So, like, I had it very structured out to the point where now talking to our clients about it and going through the whole consultation process, when I'm giving examples or explaining to them, you know, at this part of the consultation, this is something you can talk about, it's like my tone of voice changes because it's such muscle memory that I'm not just talking in like my normal voice, like, hey, you can try this or you can try this, or like maybe say something like it's almost like muscle memory just completely changes my tone of voice. And it's like I'm in consultation mode. So it's like even to our clients, I can't even speak with like a, you know, normal, it's like a sales voice turns on almost because that's, again, it's muscle memory. And when I start saying this sentence, it has to be said in this tone and everything like that. But I
Yeah.
notice the same thing with you. It's like you're not just having a normal conversation saying like, "Hey, try this, try that," or ask someone, when you're handling this objection, ask them this, like your tone of voice changes also because it's muscle memory. And so when you ask specific questions or explain something that you would normally in your discovery process or sales process, like it's such muscle memory that when you're talking to people about it in a normal conversation, like it turns on.
Yeah, and you know, I was thinking a little bit about this yesterday, and first and foremost, go have fun with the conversations that you have with people. You know, like I think sometimes you feel like you need to be so robotic as well. And you know, there's that saying in sales that nothing will ever be truer about sales than people buy from people they feel like they know, like, and trust. It's the same thing
Mhm.
as the personality hire in corporate America. You know, people always talk about that, like, how did that guy or that girl get that job? And really, what it is the boss just liked them the most.
Mhm.
And people buy from people that they like. And so I know people hate being told this, but smile more. show people your teeth, not in a weird way, but like show people, let people see your teeth and like smile at them. It's like,
Smile on the phone. You can tell a difference.
straight up, there's that saying of smile through the phone. And, like, people can
Mhm.
feel when there's like some juice, some activity going on, not just like this sterile, yeah, tell me what's going on. Yeah, here's what it costs. I'm not buying from that person.
Yeah.
And by the way, none of us are. I think something that we all need to realistically do in our businesses is sit there and think like, would I buy from me? Would I buy from me? Am I impressed by myself at all? Am I impressed by the sales pitch that I have? Am I genuinely impressed by the business that I have? Or if I was somebody who was in this marketplace looking for this service, looking for a dog trainer, is there somebody out there right now who's doing something that is a clear and away better offer than what I have? I mean, that's a
Mhm.
really painful thing to have to face. But if you are somebody who like doesn't have the sales process down, you're not nice to the clients, you're not excited to talk to them, and they call in and the other guy down the street is, or gal, they're going to go with them 10 times out of 10. And
Yeah.
so all of us have this inside of us, this ability to talk to people. But somewhere along the way, I think you start losing it because you get a little bit jaded. You talk to some people that were a little bit annoying or some difficult clients, or just frankly, you're burnt out and don't want to have to answer the phone anymore. And that's a whole different discussion about like when the appropriate time is to hire and, how many people are well overdue to actually hire somebody to do that and just train them on how to do it. But the point is like, you need to get people to fall in love with you. And I always
Mhm.
took it as like a really good opportunity, like even if I would go and meet with somebody and or if I'm on a sales call and the husband is like very standoffish. I feel like we've all experienced that. I almost like make it a game for myself where I'm like, as David Goggins says, like I will steal your soul, like I will make you like me. But regardless
Mhm.
of what I have to do, like I will make you like me, I will make you my friend, and I will make you laugh. Because as soon as I start having somebody laugh and telling stories and stuff like that, it's like they're gonna buy. So you do this with the people that you feel like you can genuinely help. Obviously, we're not advocating to do this with anybody, pull the wool over their eyes. You're doing this stuff because the alternative is if you do not do this, then what you're really doing is in a selfish way, not being willing to go to this place with your clients to help them actually get the results what they actually want with their dog. And so like let me break that down a little bit further. By you not being willing to like put yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone and just take like one step further, what you're really letting people do is stay stuck in their own bullshit and their own procrastination and not actually get a well-trained dog. And you're letting
Mhm.
another family in your area have to stay sick and tired and struggling with their dog and their bad behavior, or even worse, fall into the arms of another dog trainer who is not going to be able to help them as much as you were able to, but they just got the work because they're a better salesperson than you. So for me, what I almost feel like is like it's almost like an ethical question. It's almost like an ethical dilemma where it's like, is it your own stuff that's getting in the way that's stopping you from doing this? That if you did it, you would be serving more people and saving more dogs.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, put on a show if you need to, honestly. Like when I
Wear
mean,
something a little revealing if you need to. I don't care.
no, on a phone call. Put on
Shout out to Bethany, our client, who was like, "Yeah, I just put on like a tight dress and get on social media," and she was like totally kidding, but like it's funny. I was just joking with her because I was like, "That is the time tested marketing thing." You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
beautiful woman, sports car works every time.
Yeah, I mean, you do what you need to do, but on the on a phone call, what I mean by that is like even if you aren't like a super bubbly person or if you woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning or you literally just got off of a phone call with another maybe like pain in the ass client and then right after that you get a call and don't answer it with the emotions that you're feeling in that moment, answer it as if I mean literally, you answer it as if you've never had an interaction with this person before, because obviously you haven't. It's a new lead. And it's also just not fair to that person for them to just like have the experience that you're giving them just based off of emotion. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I feel like every lead that calls deserves a good experience, obviously, but like the same experience you're giving everyone. And so
Yeah,
you have a process, you have a system and how you do these phone calls. Everyone deserves that same process.
yeah. Another good sports analogy is like win the games you're supposed to win.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I know you don't know what I mean at all, but it's okay. Good teams win the games they're supposed to win on the schedule. Like, we're a better team. We should win that game, you know? And then they win some games that they're not even supposed to win, you know? And sometimes you're like, man, that was a really hard fought battle and they had a lot of objections but I won them over. But a lot of us, we listen back to calls, they're losing the games they're not even supposed to lose. They're losing the games to the horrible teams. You know, they're not closing people who are lay down sales. And just because they're not willing to give people like some time and attention. And so, what this really makes me think of is a cold lead sales process works on every type of lead. A warm lead sales process only works on warm leads. It does not work on cold leads. And so when you really break that down, what that means is if you're somebody who just like gets a call that comes in, you don't answer it, you call them back in a couple hours, you talk to them for 10 minutes and you price drop, and some people buy, you close the lay down sale. But it wasn't even really sales. It was just like you did the thing that you were supposed to do and like you made the sale, you know? But at the end of the day, like that will not work on people they don't know you yet, they don't like you yet, and they don't trust you yet. They just don't know anything about you, so they couldn't possibly feel any type of way about you. And so we need to get them to know, like, and trust us. And that only comes through building a real relationship with them. You know what I mean? It's the same thing as what we were talking about before, Angel, before this call. It's like, there's a reason why all these companies don't just do, email blasts with like, this is exactly what it looks like to work with us. Here's our programs. Do you want to buy one or not? Because it completely removes the whole concept of sales. And it's like, if that were true, then bigger companies wouldn't have sales departments. They wouldn't have appointment setting departments. Like, if it didn't matter and it just came down to like, I'm good at what I do and that's it. I just tell people what it costs and they're going to buy it or they're not going to, then sales as we know it wouldn't exist. But obviously we all know deep down, like, of course it matters. Or else, why are we all doing this? You know what I mean?
Yeah. What I've told some people before, like specifically for people who more so struggle with just like the rapport building and connecting with people on the phone. We've tried to like work through their sales process and stuff like that. And maybe they're saying the right things, but you can still just tell in like their tonality that there's just like a disconnect. So it's like what I've told people is, all right, right now we're going to focus on just like the way that you speak to people. So when you're going to answer a call, your goal at that time is to just build a relationship with them. Tell yourself every single time you answer the phone, I am going to make a new friend. So that's got to come before you obviously start selling things. So when I notice that people, despite their actual sales process, they're just really having a hard time with being able to like connect with people on the phone and build good rapport, we'll kind of shift the gears over to that, is just stop focusing so much on the consultation at this point. Like, just, you're going to make a friend with this person and then everything's going to follow after that.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's the age-old relational over transactional. So many of us, and I've fallen into this trap myself, where you get into the mindset of, I got to make a sale, I got to make a sale. And you stop treating people like individuals with their own individualized problems. And you just start treating them like you're just a means to an end. Like, you just got to come in, buy this program, we'll get you results. And then like, we're just focused on hammering, the next phone call. And yeah, you gotta really be willing to go there with people and understand their actual problems. But with that being said, I think we should wrap the call up here, just because I know that we both have another call we got to run to. But with that being said, I'm just going to, I'll just finish up with this. Like, something that we've really started realizing as a company, and something that we've really started helping a lot more with, is building out real sales processes with people. We've always done sales coaching and stuff like that, but this is something we're really refining, and even helping people place people in their business to take some of the appointment setting off of their plate and stuff like that. So if you're somebody who feels like they're struggling with this, and they know that you're not getting the most out of your leads that you could be, and you feel like, my system is pretty much a lead comes in, if they don't buy right now, I don't really ever talk to them again. Maybe I'll follow up with them, but there's no real clear-cut system of following up with them in the future and moving them through an actual funnel. Make sure to get in touch with us, because this is something that we spend a lot of time focusing on with our clients, and we can definitely help you. And a lot of times people think they need to spend more money on ads. Sometimes that's the case, and sometimes that's appropriate. But a lot of times it just comes down to even getting more out of what you're currently getting and supplementing just a little bit more with ads. So with that being said, I'm going to wrap the call up here for today, but I hope you guys got some value out of this one, and we will see you guys all very soon in the next video. See you guys.
Bye, guys.